Okay, so this week on Ever Roaming, I'm going to talk about cook stoves, to cook versus not to cook. Stay tuned. For the best tips, tricks, and gear reviews for section hiking the PCT, be sure to subscribe to my channel and hit the little bell so you get notified when I put out a new video, hopefully every Friday. All right, so one of my subscribers recently asked to talk about cook stoves, how to use them, how to select them, and all that good stuff. You'll notice I'm in my backyard today. That's because there's a nice hard concrete surface here, and it's a safe place for me to show you the stoves. I think if I did them in the park, it might freak people out. So you'll have to bear with the neighborhood sounds. I'll see what I can do about that. All right, so I'm going to talk about 3 different types of stoves that I've used, and we'll go over all of those in detail. The first will be the Jetboil, the second will be the MSR Pocket Rocket 2, and the third will be my little BSR that I absolutely love. So let's take a look at the stoves. There's always birds laughing at me. So this first one is the Jetboil. It is very self-contained. You can put a small canister of fuel inside of here. Actually, it just stuck to my burner. And then it has the burner which fits inside of here. This burner has its own ignition device, and then I'll tell you some of the pros and cons about that as well. But it's a pretty good capacity. And then on the very bottom, there is a measuring cup. So if you need a specific amount of water, if you're reconstituting a freeze-dried package, you can measure that out. All right, the next stove that I'm going to talk about is going to be the MSR Pocket Rocket 2. It's a really good stove. I like the control on it. It folds up. You can control the burner really well with this if you want a high boil or a low simmer. And I'll show you how all these little prongs work. It does come in this case. For the sake of weight, for me, I took it out of this case. It's probably a good idea to keep it in here because it is hard-sided and it'll protect it. I usually just kept it in this little glasses case bag, and I would put it inside my pot. The third stove I'm going to talk about is my little BRS. This thing seems so tiny and flimsy and fragile, but it's actually super reliable and super durable. I have the link in the description below if you want to check it out. Through Amazon is where I found it. And it's super lightweight. So it has great control here with this little valve adjuster for your flame. I know it seems really, really tiny and flimsy, but it's super powerful and super durable. And this thing is so light. So this stove I keep in a little Z-Pax stove bag, and I keep a small Bic lighter in there. Let's talk about fuel canister choices. Yes, this giant canister will last you a really long time, but it's quite heavy. This canister, I'm not sure on its weight total full, but it is 8.1 ounces of fuel. I didn't find carrying such a big canister absolutely necessary. I found some tricks around that. I like to carry these smaller canisters, and I found a way to get these to last a really long time by how much I use them, and I'll show you that trick. So for this one, it does tell you the net weight is 3.9 ounces and the gross weight is 7.4 ounces. It even shows you how to see how much is left in the canister by floating it in water. All right, so this is my trick to not using as much fuel. I only make hot coffee in the morning, sometimes a hot breakfast, and then in the evening I will make a hot beverage and a hot meal. So what I use this for, especially in the Sierra where you may end up using more fuel because of the altitude, I would cold soak in here. Now this is a new one that I just got from Trader Joe's, their gelato. Other people use, I think it's called Talento. It's another type of gelato container. It's super lightweight. I haven't taken the label off this yet, but what I would do is overnight I would soak like my oats in here, and if I wanted them hot in the morning I would go ahead and put them in my cook stove, and heat them up. Or during the day, what I would do, because I liked to have quinoa sometimes for dinner, is during the day after I had made my breakfast and cleaned this out, I would put my quinoa or my vegetables that were dehydrated in here in my backpack, in my food bag, to soak with water for the day. So when I got to camp, it cut down my cook time. I was basically just reheating. Okay, so I have my little kitchen scale that I use. Let's take a look at all of these. I also forgot to mention the Jetboil comes with this little stand that you put your gas on to help stabilize it. And I actually took this and used it for using with my pot, and I'll show you how I do that today. But let's take a look at the weight of some items. All right, so let's weigh the Jetboil with all of its equipment except for the gas canister. So it is 15 ounces. That's just shy of 1 pound. And let me show you why I've chose the other stoves. Okay, so this next stove is the MSR Pocket Rocket. I'm going to show you the weight with it in its case. It comes in at 3.6 ounces. And I got rid of the case when I was carrying it because the case itself weighs 1 ounce. And the stove itself weighs 2.5 ounces. All right, now let's take a look at my teeny tiny favorite. 0.9 ounces, less than 1 ounce. That thing is magical. That's the BSR. Okay, and then the little Z-Packs stove bag, when I add that to it, it's still 0.9. It's not even adding. Okay, so I also wanted to show you, this is the titanium pot that I use. I really like this pot. It's super lightweight. It is titanium. It is great, and it has this little lid that is so you can touch it when it's hot to pull the lid on and off, and it has these great handles on the side. It's probably bigger than I need, but I really like the way that the shape of it is very stable. And let's look at the weight of that. 4.1 ounces. All right, so this is my cook setup with my stove, my holder, my teeny tiny sponge that weighs like nothing, literally nothing, and the lid. Let me set that on here. 6.4 ounces total. And I still get to add my cold soak jar. Still less than the Jetboil. And just for the sake of interest, here is what the cold soak jar weighs. 1.8 ounces. Okay, so let's put the stoves to the test. So let's take a look how this one works. So you flip this out for the burner, and you screw it on to the top of the canister. You'll hear a little gas escape when you're screwing it on, that's fine. Normally this one I would put it on its stand, but I'm going to be putting this one on the stand for stability because the stove that I'm going to show you is so small. So it just pops in and it gives it a nice base. All right, so the first two that I'm going to show you together, so we're going to do the BSR on this one. Always make sure that this little knob is closed before you screw it on, or you're going to have gas just leaking everywhere. And don't use the prongs to tighten like I just was. Hold it by its little base here until it's tight, and you're ready to go. Okay, so I'm gonna heat up 1 cup of water. Yes, the Jetboil is going to be much faster than a regular stove, but I'm gonna show you how these work. And just to note, even though the Jetboil is this tall, there's a little marker inside that you can't fill it past that line. So you can't fill this whole capacity. There's also this thing here on the side that you'll see, and when it's boiling and it's hot, it's gonna turn yellow to tell you that it's ready. Remember, the Jetboil has its own ignition. So turn on the gas until you hear it, and then push the button until it lights. Same here, gonna turn on the gas and light. And then this one you do have to carefully balance. So you try to get the prongs in the middle, and it'll feel pretty stable, even though it's tiny. A trick with the Jetboil also is to make sure that you get this opening on the opposite side of the handle so that when you pour, it won't burn you with the steam, and you can pour it out. We're gonna turn these both to high and let them go. You can see that this one's starting to turn yellow to signify that it's heating up. And it's ready. There's a reason they call it Jetboil. Let's see how this one's doing. It's starting to bubble, so it's not terribly slow. Okay, so I'm going to show you how this one works. This burner needs to cool down for a moment. It is pretty hot. I made a mistake once of actually touching it, and I had a huge burn. I think I still have a little scar on my thumb there. Okay, so this one is very similar to that. You're just going to fold the gas valve out, the adjustment, and then you're going to take your burner legs, and it's a little tricky to get them just right so they all unfold. This one you'll see is a much wider base, and it is a little more stable, but I haven't found any issues with this one as long as you're just really paying attention to how you're putting the pot on. Again, want to close the valve control completely so that gas doesn't leak, and then you're just going to screw it on. All the way. Okay. Okay, so again, 1 cup of cold water. So you can see how well it boils it, how quickly. And then I always like to light before I put it on. So turn on the gas a little bit. Light. And you'll see on this burner, it has a wider area, surface area for the flame, and you have really good control. So you can turn this down to a pretty good simmer and really high for a rolling boil. And you see the base here is a lot wider on the prongs. It's actually sticking out underneath. This one doesn't have as big of an surface area, so it doesn't really spread the flame as much, and it's not quite as controllable for a simmer. And I can't say that the times are exact because I've got the gas turned up as what I think is high, but it could be slightly different on each one. Let's see how this one's doing. See, that is really nice. Even if this is warm, this doesn't bother me because it's coated. And the handles, if you place it properly, are not going to get hot because they're sticking out past the flame. Starting to kind of bubble on the bottom. We'll give it another second. Keeping the lid on helps it boil faster. It also keeps debris out of your water, especially if it's greasy. All right, that is now hot enough to either make some coffee or start reconstituting something, which is usually mashed potatoes or quinoa, which is my favorites. Yep, there it goes. It's beginning to bubble. I don't like super boiling water for my coffee. Just hot. All right, so there's a look at the Jetboil, the MSR Pocket Rocket 2, and the BRS 3000. Well, now that I have some hot water, I think I'll make myself a nice cup of tea. Perfect. Cheers.